Bonjour.
Bonjour.
What are you gonna have, Anna?
Well, their peanut butter latte is really something special. Bonjour. Moi, je vais prendre, s'il vous plaît, le buddy.
Moi, je prends un cappuccino à voir.
That's what I
That's
thought.
amazing.
Hippo, something like that. It's literally like hippo puff or hippo puff. I'm off, but I'm not off. Like I'm onto something.
What's seahorse?
Hippocamp.
Hello everybody, this is the Eiffel Tower. My name is Oliver G. This is brought to you by the tour company My Private Paris, and today I'm with Anna Kloots, walking around in the 10th arrondissement. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Very well. If you're listening to this at home, this is going to be like a normal podcast, but if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see us walking through the 10th arrondissement towards the Canal Saint-Martin, drinking a very beautifully made coffee from Buddy Buddy. So far so good?
One of my favorite coffee spots in Paris.
There you go. And the idea is we're going to be talking about the mistakes that people make when they're coming to Paris based on our combined Paris years of 15.
15 years of
Right?
Paris knowledge.
Are you ready to get into it?
I'm very ready, let's do it.
Let's do it. So before anything, Anna, let's just rewind a little bit. You've been in Paris for 5 years.
Almost, yes.
In January.
January is 5 years,
So
which is crazy.
Well, crazier still for me is that we did the first podcast recording in November 2020.
Yes.
And things have changed an awful lot for you since then.
Are you impressed that I'm still here?
I'm impressed that you've thrived. You've thrived. Like, it's
you.
really cool to follow your journey. I went back and looked at what we talked about last time. And firstly, your work, it's grown a lot. In 2020, you had 100,000 people following. At least that's what we said at the time.
That's what we said at
and
the
now
time?
it's at least 500,000 I saw.
That's
Let's go this
amazing,
way.
wow.
So a lot more people are listening to you talk about things in Paris.
Yes.
Which I think makes you a good co-host on an episode about mistakes to make in the city.
Well, thank you.
You've also got a book, My Own Magic.
I do.
That's come out. When that come out?
I would have just signed my book deal then when we last spoke, or been like in the almost about to sign phase. That came out in May 2023.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's kept you busy as well.
Very.
And
very,
then
very.
keeping an eye on all the people coming to Paris and making sure they don't make mistakes must be keeping you busy as well, right?
Definitely.
So I want to run through some of the sort of lists that we've come up with together. And I want to pick your brains and maybe share my ideas as well to try and help people who are thinking to come to the city with some of these.
Like me, you're heartbroken if you hear someone came and didn't love it and they had a bad experience.
And it does happen.
And it does happen. And so that's why I love kind of digging into these mistakes. It's not to try to tell you what you're doing wrong. It's to give you tips so that you maybe don't make a mistake that would leave a bad taste in your mouth and would make you go, oh, I hated Paris.
And I think you're right. I think when some people have like a really negative experience, like their phone is stolen or something like that, it ruins the city for them, and it's so unfair. Because there's a lot more to the city. But some of these tips we come up with are a little bit more offbeat than just tie your phone safely in your pocket.
True.
And one that you started off with here, quite harsh I thought almost. It was don't take the metro full stop.
Okay, don't take the metro full stop.
No period at the end, okay. But it was you're against it, or?
I'm not against taking the metro. Of course, the metro is practical, useful, dependent on what you're using it for.
Right.
My stance that I've made before is don't default to taking the metro. Paris is a small city, very walkable.
People don't realize how small it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's tiny actually.
If you compare it to London
who live here, we
yeah.
say it's a village.
Yep.
I'm sure you use this.
Certainly do.
So Paris is very walkable and so beautiful that if you just default to jumping on the metro to get from A to B, you might not realize that walk would have been past the Louvre, through the Jardin de Tuileries, through things that maybe are on your list as a visitor of what you want to see and do anyway.
Yeah.
And you are bypassing it, and you're now subject to being underground where you're not seeing anything. aside from a couple of the metro stations, which are quite interesting and lovely, there's a couple that when I'm down there from time to time, I'm like, oh wow, that's cool.
What do you think about buses?
Buses?
Yeah.
I used to take the bus every day when I was a student here, actually. I took the 69 bus from the BHV all the way to my school by the Eiffel Tower.
Right.
Better than the underground, because I like being able to see things.
You get a view, yeah.
But traffic here is nuts, you know that.
Of course, yeah.
So
I
you're
took a
gonna
bus
lose
here just
time.
now and I didn't even know what I was doing. I was like, why am I doing that? I could have probably
Exactly.
walked quicker.
I'm all about just like, if you only have a limited time in a place, you want to see as much as that place as possible.
Yeah.
So if you have the ability to walk, if you don't have any mobility issues and you want to see as much as you can, then oftentimes if you look on the map and I'll put it in my Google Maps sometimes of like, okay, what's my transit time to get there to check how long it's going to take me to walk.
Yeah.
It'll say, 22 minutes, metro, 34 minutes walking. And I'm like, okay, so for 10 extra minutes, basically,
Totally.
I can be above ground and
Yep.
I can see things. And for me, it's really how I've discovered so much of this city and learned my way around, because I truly walk everywhere.
I think a lot of people who are coming from other big cities might mistakenly think that Paris is like London or LA or something like that. But really, I mean, this tip could equally have been prioritize walking over anything else. But
Yeah.
also, I think that the metro, some people I know, even though it's an old metro, a very well-functioning metro, it also has its downsides that it can be a bit
Crowded.
can be a bit gross, can be a little
Definitely.
bit dangerous.
It's a very common place for people to get pickpocketed.
So walk. You know what? I'll add an anecdote. I never take the metro. I never have taken the metro to Châtelet for ages because it's a huge metro station. It's
I get lost.
yeah. And I popped that. So I went just down Rue de Rivoli, the big, easy street that I walk and I always know where I am. I popped out last night and I was like, I don't know where I am. I don't know which way to turn. And I was like a total tourist and I was like, this isn't a pleasant experience as well.
No.
So anyhow, don't take the metro
By default.
by default.
Look
That's
up
a
your
nice one, yeah.
options,
Yeah.
consider walking, you're gonna see more of a city, you're gonna learn your way around, you're gonna stumble upon little gems that you wouldn't stumble upon if you're on the metro.
I'm glad you said that, little gems, because that takes us nicely to our next point, which is
All those plastic covered flower little gems all over Paris
exactly
that
right.
are going viral on TikTok.
viral flowers. That's what you TikTok. So the number 2 mistake is don't go to the viral places. End of story. I'm being a bit.
Okay.
I'm being a bit.
Not end of story.
Okay, go on.
But I have found that people, I spend a lot of time on Instagram as part of my job, and I see, top 10 cafes of Paris, and they're just all these places that I know are not good. I know that they're not making things in-house, that they're covered in plastic flowers, and that's
Plastic
why
flowers is a weird thing, isn't
I
it?
don't get the plastic flowers thing. I have never understood it.
I think it worked for one person once, and people are like, oh, I can copy paste that idea.
I have you heard this? That there is a company here in Paris now that goes and will do your plastic flowers for you.
Yeah.
They come and they tell you the results
Yeah.
of how business grows after you cover your facade in plastic flowers.
Yep.
And they're actually selling this as a selling point. But to me, most of those places are not serving quality food.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the best
It's like they're
experience.
taking a
you've had.
shortcut. You know what it's like? It's like a light for a moth. It's like attracting people who
Exactly.
are like, oh, it's not indicative at all
You're
of
seeing
what's
it
on the
going,
inside.
oh, that looks cute, but
Do you have rules about crossing red lights?
I used to live in New York City. I just do. I take a risk whenever I see it clear. I usually just run.
So this is an interesting tip because you are an Instagrammer. There's pretty much 500,000 people following you talking about your life and about Paris, which means you surely are recommending cafes and stuff too.
I do. None of
so-
them are covered in plastic flowers. Very few of them are anything that when you see these lists of must eat here, must go here, top 10 spots.
Yeah.
I also just, I'm not a big person of needing to, I'm not going to spend my time on a holiday waiting in line for 2 hours to get into a restaurant because it's super Instagrammable
Yeah.
or because a certain dish is really Instagrammable.
Yeah.
I'm an Instagrammer who doesn't really care about things being Instagrammable.
Interesting.
My guide to Paris has a lot of restaurants in it, a lot of cafes, but it's what I'm seeking out. Like, I want amazing food. I want an experience that is transporting me back to like old Paris, cute little charming cafes that I know are locally owned. Like, that's what I'm seeking.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes you follow these lists of like the most Instagrammable, or you see these places going viral for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And I think often people's experience when they've gone there is bad.
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, when you see these places that are, you know, trending, you've probably been to most of them too.
Often to try and keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening in the city, which is becoming impossible with like coffee shops and stuff, because it's just opening all the time. But I also think, to add to it, I think a lot of people who are coming to Paris, especially for 3 or 4 days or a weekend, your time is your most valuable thing. And standing in a line for anything, is wasting your time.
It certainly, if you're going to be in like a 3-hour line to get a chocolate mousse, because there's a lot of chocolate mousse around this city.
Not just that.
You don't need that one.
And there's other things. This city's got so many good things to do. Like, great, you got to see the Mona Lisa, go do it. But you could go and see a million other cool things instead. A million, that's how many
I very much feel like you really have to figure out what your priorities are and kind of drown out the noise of what's the gotta do in that city, because the gotta do is dependent on you. Yep. Like, what do you have to eat? Like, you don't have to eat somewhere just because everybody's talking about the viral, you know, X, Y, or Z. Like, it should matter to you what your priorities are, what places you know are going to go that make you feel like, wow, this is exactly what I was hoping to experience in Paris or wherever you are. You shouldn't just be following a list that someone made who probably doesn't live here about what the best X, Y, or Z is.
Or they copy-paste a list of each other, you know, like from an office in another country or another city. But anyway, talking about gotta do, we got to get on to point 3 and off this bridge, I think. I've got them written down here. Oh, this is an interesting one. Especially because we're walking by the canal. I can talk about that later, but you said don't talk to strangers.
Don't talk to strangers.
Which
stranger danger.
We can add a caveat at the end of this episode about all the tips, but it's a very fair point and it really encompasses a lot. And I see anytime you go to a touristy area in Paris, you see the people making this mistake. People who are coming up and talking to you are usually up to no good.
Okay, so I'm sure you would agree with me. It is not a very Parisian thing to do to just go up and talk to a stranger, right?
No, you don't.
You're not even going to compliment somebody's jacket on the street if you like it. Like, it's just
has
not.
Has to be a very good jacket.
It's trust me. I mean, I used to live in New York and I'm from the Midwest. Like, I'm used to just, oh my gosh, I love your outfit. You look so cute. Oh, thank you. You too. Like, right? Oh, I love your dog. Like, it's normal to talk to strangers in other cities. Here, it's not really. So you should know as a visitor that if someone is coming up and approaching you, it's probably not for a good reason, right? They're probably you're probably entering the early stages of some form of a scam, some form of a please sign my petition. I'm going to put this brace in all these scams that exist here.
And this must hurt you as a friendly Midwestern.
It does. It actually, like, it kills me to write that tip of like, don't talk to strangers, because interacting with the locals in any city gives you so much insight into the culture and adds to your experience positively. But when you're being approached by someone in Paris and you're visibly a tourist, this is not a good, we're not going in a good direction.
And that's kind of what the whole point of this conversation is, to help people to appreciate the city for what it is and not to be perhaps tricked into these things. Like, if someone comes and talks, like, if someone comes up to you in Paris and says, I like your coat, that could be your future boyfriend or girlfriend. You don't have to avoid.
It's true.
But generally, it's true that people who are coming up to you, it's so out of character.
It's a mindset to remember of if someone is coming up and trying to talk to me, it's just like be aware that this is you're probably being marked as a tourist and it might not end in a good situation.
And it goes with what we said before. Actually, we could do a whole extra episode about this, but standing out as a tourist, I was thinking when we were talking about the metro, a lot of people are standing on the street reading big old maps, which is still very much a thing.
Still?
I saw it today because I knew I was talking to you. I was like, I got to bring that up.
That actually makes me really happy.
Except
because that used to be me.
Well, if you want to put a bullseye on you as a tourist, holding a paper map.
I didn't have a phone. I was 19.
Oh, yeah,
I didn't
okay.
have a working phone.
Yeah.
It was me and a paper map from
Doesn't
the
it-
concierge.
It feels weird to think in Paris that, like, if you think it's always been a very popular city, not that long ago, everyone must have been walking around with maps.
Yeah.
Not that long ago. I mean, like, 11 years ago, or before smartphones.
I love that you saw a map person today.
Oh yeah.
But I mean-
I was like tourist. I'm going to approach them and frighten them. No, I'm kidding.
Here's the thing, though. You should talk to other locals. Like, talk to your waiter. Talk to,
Absolutely.
people who are taking you in, of course, guides or shopkeepers. If you're brave enough to go to the marché or
Yeah.
go into a fromagerie, talk to those people. But it's more if someone is approaching you, just have your guard up that like you could be in the early stages of some kind of scam that's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth if you get pickpocketed or roped into one of those various scenarios that we know exist here.
You've traveled an awful lot. I see like 80 plus countries.
83.
83. As if I get this right, a magician's assistant
Yes.
back in the day. We're talking
I
about the
traveled a lot
past.
with my ex-husband, but I traveled a lot before that. I moved to London, and that's when I really like started traveling. I moved to London at 21, and the weather was so terrible that I just started booking tickets on the weekend on Ryanair and
Yeah.
EasyJet for 10 or
Oh, man,
15 bucks.
I did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I used to live in London, did the same thing. Go to any place.
Because it's so easy and
yeah.
it's so affordable that you're just. I had this mindset of like either do this now or maybe I'll never get the
Yeah.
chance to do it.
You know, it says a lot that you've been to all these places. You ended up choosing Paris.
It was always my favorite.
Really?
That's why I do feel very like I always wanted to end up here. It's a dream that started at 12 and then I still had that dream at 30 after everything else.
And do you still have that
I had
energy
done.
for the city? Like I remember when we talked last, we were in Pigalle and we did that
I need
episode.
to go back and listen to 4 years ago me.
Well, I should listen to the whole thing as well. But I skimmed through it and I was like, I remember being very impressed by your hunger for the city. And do you feel you still got that hunger after these years have passed?
Absolutely. I think I say Paris, like your first year here is like a honeymoon, right? Everything's easy and it's just easy to be in love that first year. You're like, well, this is wonderful, everything's beautiful. And then you start to realize the quirks and the faults in your partner, right?
Yeah,
And in this case, my partner is Paris.
Faults and quirks.
Typical friend. Exactly.
Let's cross over this bridge. We got that in common that we were sort of drawn to Paris and we came here and loved the city. You know what else we have in common? ABBA fans.
I didn't know you were an ABBA
I
fan.
didn't know you were an ABBA fan either. But I've got the
What?
Swedish connection. It's a story for another day, but I want
Sweden will be country 84 for me. I have almost made
Really?
it there.
But you haven't been there?
No, and
my
I
God.
almost went this summer.
And you know they got
then
the
it's
ABBA
just
museum
Like, that's
as
why I
well.
want to go, and I.
That's why you want to go to Sweden for the ABBA
I mean,
museum?
it's on a high priority.
Yeah.
It's one of the top contending reasons.
Oh
yes.
my goodness, you must go there.
I have Swedish roots on my dad's side.
Right.
Like not first generation, but they're back there. And I am a massive ABBA,
Well, we can compare notes on ABBA in Sweden later. And LeBron James is the other big connection, by the way.
That's
in
right, you're my basketball friend.
But I want to get on to point, we got 0.45 and a bonus 6.
Okay.
Number 4, this is one for you to explain to us, is don't expect it to be America.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, fill in the blank of don't expect it to be wherever it is you're coming from. Don't
Right.
expect it to be Germany. Don't expect it to be, anywhere you're coming from. A lot of people, when they travel, they are prepared for the city to change, for the food to change,
Yeah.
but they sometimes are not as prepared for the culture to change.
Right.
And I hate when I hear people that feel like that leave going, oh, the French were so rude to me, or the service was so bad, or they have these, they have these grievances based on the lack of actual understanding of the
Yeah.
difference of culture here.
Yep.
And I think that where this is most apparent, and the thing tourists are going to run into the most, is at a cafe.
Yep.
You sit down at a chill little cafe here. I am prepared that no one is going to acknowledge my presence for a good 15 minutes.
Sure.
And that is just the norm. It's not that they're being rude. It's not that the service is bad. That is just France.
And it's so different in the States as well, where people will come up to the table, introduce himself, and
I have reverse culture shock when
Yeah.
I'm home now.
Really,
Like,
really, yeah.
truly, you sit down at a restaurant, and within seconds, giant waters
Yeah.
full of ice. How are we all doing today? The
Yeah.
chef's special is artichoke dip with some cranberry crostinis. Should we start with that? And you're like,
yeah.
who is we? How? Why are you already
Why
offering
did you
me
introduce
things?
yourself to me?
I didn't ask for this
Yeah.
tumbler of water. Like you have to remember, and I don't know if you can do any preparation ahead of time. Like I try to do a little crash course in my Paris guide of like, here's what to expect. Here's what's normal in France. Here's like some French etiquette so you understand. Because it would be easy to take that to heart and think like, oh, the service is terrible. It's not terrible. It's just different. And
Sure.
And on the other point, as I'm sure you know, you have to flag someone down and beg for your check here to
Yeah.
get out. Where in America, after an hour and a half, they're like, okay, bye,
Funny,
here you
isn't
go,
it?
and
It's
you my
funny
next
because
table.
it's actually nice not being rushed out
I
of a
love
restaurant.
it.
Yeah, yeah, but
You
at
could
first,
sit for hours
Yeah.
with just a glass of wine and no one
Yeah.
cares.
It's such a weird thing to get, because I've been guilty of this myself, but it's so weird to think, where are they? I want to pay and get out of here. When
Yeah.
you're in a perfectly lovely place that you've chosen to eat, which you maybe had a really nice meal and you're enjoying it. It's that whole thing of adapting to the speed and the style of Paris and France in general. I mean, outside of Paris, it's even slower.
Which is slow, which is another point of ours.
Yeah.
A mistake I say not to make is to try to not do anything in a rush here.
That could even be the next point. You led onto it perfectly.
I perfectly led into the next point, and I learned that the hard way. I'm sure you have too. I'll sometimes think like, oh, I just need to grab a coffee really quick.
Yeah.
Like I have 3 minutes before I have 3 minutes to grab a coffee. That's a very possible thing in New York City, where I moved here from. That is not a possible thing in France. You are not doing
Sure.
anything
Sure.
in 3 minutes.
Sure.
Anything.
Yeah, I mean, when I moved to Paris, I worked in an office, totally different job, and there were lots of French people in the office, and they would have, I swear to you, at least 90-minute lunch breaks where they'd cook a whole feast for everybody with wine and everything. And those first weeks and months, I'd eat a sandwich like at the desk.
Yeah,
until
typing with one hand.
until one of the French people complained to my boss, like, this guy, why is he eating at the desk? That's not how we do it here. And I was like,
Exactly.
it's just a different pace of life to adapt to. But it goes for not just rushing for coffees, everything just in general. Like, take a slow walk, take a, nicer, longer lunch break. You don't need to.
Everything is at a much slower pace here, and it makes, to me, it's one of my favorite things about Paris. Actually, it's like the way you approach life. Like the reason it takes so long to get your croissant at the boulangerie is because the boulanger is having a little mini conversation with everybody. There's no just like, you want this, like it's not transactional.
Yeah.
It's very slow. You know the boulanger because you go there every week, and
Yeah.
so, oh, how ça va? How's
Yeah.
your kid? You're having a petit conversation, and then you're off. There's no just like quick transaction happening, so everything is going to take more time. Like the marché, do you go to like your local fresh
Sure,
marché
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
groceries? I mean, how much time do you allot for that process?
The whole week. But do you get a reverse culture shock when you go back to the States for that as well? That you
For
go to buy
everything.
a coffee and you start chatting and people behind you are like, hey, get on with it.
Well-
I'm waiting here.
I mean, it depends where I am. In the Midwest, it's normal to have a full chat. When I'm back in New York is when I am like, whoa, okay, like, I've, by noon, I've accomplished like 15 things, where in Paris, I wouldn't have even left my apartment
Yeah,
yet.
yeah.
But I think, you have to just be prepared of like, and because you're a tourist and you're planning a lot in your schedule, you'll think, oh, we have an hour for lunch. That is not enough time to sit anywhere. You should grab a quick boulangerie sandwich. You should maybe get a crepe. But if you're going to say, oh, we have an hour to sit down and have a lunch, and you're expecting that turnaround to happen, that's you wanting France to adapt to you and your schedule, and it's not going to happen. And you're going to end up mad, yelling at your waiter. Your waiter's not going to understand. It's going to be this bad moment.
Yep, make sure you adapt. Don't expect people to adapt to you.
And
Yep.
I mean, it's tied very closely to the other one of don't expect it to be home, because in New York, it's very possible to have a full meal in 45 minutes and be out your way.
There you go.
It's not possible here. So you have to adapt and take life here a little bit slower from the pace you walk, which I get yelled at for all the time.
Have you
by my
noticed I'm walking
boyfriend.
slow, by the way? Yeah?
My boyfriend all the time is just like, Sherry, please, like, c'est tranquillou, c'est dimanche, un peu promener, you know, walk slow. It's Sunday, we can relax.
You can take the girl out of America, but you can't take the American out of the girl. Something like that.
Walking is a hard one for me. I'm just like, if I have to get from A to B, like, why are we not just getting there as fast as we can?
You need to follow point
slowing
4
down.
or 3 or whatever we said.
I
and
know.
Stop rushing.
I know.
This list is for us too. This before we get into the last tip, which is gonna turn everything on its head. It's a big twist. I just want to say that for the people listening or watching who want to check out Anna Kloots, that's the key. Anna Kloots. If you go at ANNAKLOOTS, we'll have it in the show notes, in the description, everything. You can follow her on social media, Substack, for example, and more. You mentioned your guide, that'll be linked below. Find out what Anna has to say about Paris, France, her life, and remember her book, My Own Magic, which you can find anywhere that sells good books. But now, the last point, the big one. Whew.
The most important one.
Point 6 is the biggest mistake you can make is listen to everything we've just said.
Exactly.
In other words,
Plan your entire trip based on someone else's opinions.
exactly.
You have to leave room for what you love, what your passion is, what your dream is.
Yep. You got to leave room for error. You got to leave room to. This is gonna sound weird. This is gonna sound very weird. Leave room to be robbed, if that's what it is. Like I think
Sure.
about. I talked about on the show before. My own dad, when he came to France in the 70s, his backpack got robbed, and he's talked about that story forever. And he talks about it on the podcast. That's a part of his identity, even. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So like, don't listen to people telling you what to do necessarily. Take it on board
Exactly.
and learn a little bit maybe about.
I always say
France and
you
Paris
should
today.
never let someone else's perspective shape your entire experience.
Exactly.
So you can take our tips 100% to heart if you want to, but you shouldn't, right? You should
Take the
maybe
tips,
keep it
tuck
in
them
mind.
away a little bit,
Exactly.
and you're being prepared.
But
then do
if
own
your
trip.
dream is to go to a fake flowers cafe and
Exactly.
sit there and take 1,000 pictures, then you should live your dream.
Take the metro there. But that,
Take the metro there and get really mad when
Yeah.
no one talks to you for the first 5 minutes you're sitting down. Like,
exactly right. And
you
say
have
this
to
isn't
do
America
what you
and
wanna
storm out.
do.
But that's in summary, basically, you can't really go wrong, but you can be prepared. So try and be a little bit prepared.
Yes.
Also in summary, Anna Kloots, back on the show, it was 4 years ago, almost exact. I guess it was November 2020.
That's crazy.
It's been 4 years. Let's not make sure it's 4 years again before we do this.
No,
And thank you for walking with me through Paris.
absolutely, anytime.
I'll add that if you are listening to this as a podcast, there'll be more coming up from my private Paris, talking about things to do in this city. For you guys watching here on YouTube, I'll say thanks so much for watching along with us, and we'll be doing more of these walk shows in the not too distant future. Hope you've enjoyed seeing the lovely 10th arrondissement on a kind of grey but beautiful day. So until next time, merci beaucoup, and au revoir, and thank you, Anna.
Thank you.